Having the panel discussion now, we are all open circuits, 1984 to 2024, the fading fortunes of network Utopianism. So we have our panelists today, Dr. Namhee, Director, Namjoon Paik Art Center, Lawrence Hamdan, the artist, as well as Bjungjun, Kwon, the artist. And the talk will be moderated by Maya, Khalil, who is a curator. And this talk is in partnership with the Korea Foundation of International Cultural Exchange, KOFICE, and the Namjoon Paik Art Center, and powered by GS Energy. I hope you enjoy the talk for today, and I will give the mic to our.
Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for joining us this evening. It's a pleasure to be moderating this panel with our esteemed guests. Thank you for Ayoung, the Foundation, and KOFICE for making this happen. And obviously, a big thank you for hosting us. Now, 40 years ago, the Korean artist Namjoon Paik, who is recognized as the father of video art, welcomed New Year 1984 with Good Morning, Mr. Orwell, a landmark live TV broadcast. And in defiance of the Orwellian fear of technological control, Paik had a utopian vision of global connectivity. Now, 4 decades later, our perpetual network state imposes less optimistic realities. This panel will consider tension between technological connection and control, the importance of artistic resistance to these power dynamics, and new strategies for understanding the complexities of our meeting present. Now, from the Namjoon Paik Art Center in Seoul, we have the director, Dr. Namhee, who will share the center's vision and ongoing program. And Dr. Paik will also provide insight into the continuing relevance of Paik's legacy. We are also joined by 3 artists. Hamdan, whose pioneering work in forensic audio investigation and sound installation explores the politics of listening and the relationship between sound, truth, and power. Kwon, whose multidisciplinary practice bridges music, robotics, and immersive installation to explore the intersection of technology and philosophical tradition. And Ayoung, whose multidisciplinary practice whose multimedia work creates speculative narratives that challenge our understanding of geopolitics and identity. Our conversation today will focus on contemporary technology, both the impact it has on us, as well as the potential application for resistance and reckoning. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Namhee.
So nice to meet you. I'm Namhee. My presentation starts with the AI analysis of Namhee. Welcome to the Abu Dhabi Art Fair. I'm AI Namhee, director of the Namjoon Paik Art Center. Some of you may be surprised to see AI show up without me, but I think it's much better to hear the AI voice. In this talk, I'd like to talk about why we should be looking at Namjoon Paik today and why we should be paying attention. From a technology perspective, Namjoon Paik is an artist who developed technology for the sake of art, rather than simply utilizing creative technology for art. Today, I'll break down Paik's work by medium, TV, robots, satellites, and lasers, and explore the implications of his use of technology and media for his art practice today. After a brief introduction to the Paik Art Center, we'll move on to the story of Namjoon Paik. Opened to the public in 2008, Namjoon Paik Art Center aspires to revive the generosity, criticality, interdisciplinarity characteristic of both Paik's work and life. As christened by the artist himself, NJP Art Center aims to be a museum where Paik lives on. It is not just to remain a memorial for the artist, but to seek an active undertaking to increase the awareness of Paik's work and life far and wide. As a public museum specializing in media art, NJP Art Center also devotes itself to cultivating artistic and scholarly experiments in creative and critical ways. This year marks the 40th anniversary of satellite art project Good Morning Mr. Orwell, which included the exhibitions Wake Up, its 2024 and Big Brother blockchain, and now the NJP Commission Humming Chorus, featuring 4 of contemporary artists, and Dabi Jordan, Eagle Bubitaide, Tetsuya Umeda, and Chan Suk Choi. Now let's move on. This graphic is a name card created by George Mukunas with the names of Fluxus members. Namjoon Paik was a Fluxus member. Today we'll take a look at some of the exhibitions and works of Namjoon Paik. The works we'll be looking at today are mostly from the collection of the Namjoon Paik Art Center. Namjoon Paik's media art gained momentum by his first solo show, Exposition of Music, Electronic Television, in which he presented televisions with inner circuits modified and manipulated as a work of art. This exhibition was one of the art historical occasions that brought television into the realm of art for the first time. The exhibition was also a watershed for Paik to move from an experimental composer to a pioneer of media art. Namjoon Paik presented Random Access in this exhibition. This work exemplifies Paik's brilliant idea that audiences can be the agents of their own sound production. Through his experiments with TV, Paik ultimately sought to create a machine that anyone could play like a piano. Namjoon Paik strived to move beyond manipulating the television that enabled two-way feedback toward creating a machine. Following this aim from 1964, the Paikabe video synthesizer was produced in 1969. For the first time in collaboration with the Japanese engineer Shuya Abe, the synthesizer could receive external sources such as from the camera and edit the color and shape of video images in real time. After TV, the next piece of Paik's work we'll look at is a robot, the first robot he ever built, called K456. It's a lot different from what we think of as a robot now, isn't it? It was created in 1964. In 1964, Paik migrated to the US, where he developed his video art in full swing. Not only producing video images, he combined them with sculptures and installations. First exhibited in the second annual Avant-Garde Festival of New York, Robot K456 is Namjoon Paik's first work that took the shape of a robot. In 1982, as part of Paik's retrospective at the Whitney Museum of American Art, the robot appeared in an accident performance where it was struck by a car while crossing a road. Paik called the performance as the first catastrophe of the 21st century, trying to reveal the falsehood of mechanical rationality and propose a humanized machine that possesses human anxiety and emotion, which also experiences life and death. Robot K456 exemplifies Paik's relentless interest and collaboration, which can be seen in his journey from the experiments in television and computer and robot production in the 1960s. The second robot we looked at is Genghis Khan. In the 1990s, Namjoon Paik lived the life of a nomad traveling around the world. At the Venice Biennale in 1993, where he received the Golden Lion Prize as a representative of the German pavilion, Paik explored the exchange and communication between the East and the West through an exhibition under the theme of Electronic Superhighway from Venice to Ulaanbaatar, while planning a large-scale project for the memory and history of media from a view that electronic superhighway, that is the era of the internet, that he had predicted 28 years ago, was being materialized. Before moving on to Namjoon Paik's satellite art, we should point out how interested he was in interactive live broadcasting. TV Buddha is a video installation of a Buddha statue watching the image of himself on a TV screen recorded in real time. The closed circuit structure of the camera, the subject, and the monitor in a mutual cycle is frequently used in Namjoon Paik's work, and the combination of the enlightened Buddha and television creates an interesting contrast. TV Buddha connotes Paik's idea of a live broadcast that enables interactive television operations that ask and answer each other. Through the aforementioned TV Buddha, Paik was demonstrating his interest in live broadcasts and globalization. In 1977, Paik performed a satellite performance at the Kassel Documenta with Joseph Beuys, Charlotte Moorman, Douglas Davis, and others. Later, Paik expanded his interest in satellites and created the satellite trilogy. The first satellite project, Good Morning Mr. Orwell, was broadcast live on January 1st, 1984 in the US, France, South Korea, and Germany. Planned by Paik, the satellite show involved the cooperation of broadcasting stations in each city, including the US public station WNET, and artists from all around the world, presenting 22 sequences that blended performances of renowned artists of the time, such as John Cage, Mercy Cunningham, Allen Ginsberg, and Charlotte Norman. Technologies realized by video synthesis, such as telecommunication, telepresence, and teleport, trace the utopia in which various time spaces are connected, implying that Paik's idea of technological utility is for connection and liberation. Now let's take a final look at Paik's laser work. His works that use laser, including 3 elements, symbolize Paik's continuous artistic attempts from tape music to television and video to broadcasting station and satellite and to video installation and laser. He anticipated that in the history of moving images, the notions of time and space had been fundamentally changed by video and television, and it was laser for him that could transform them once again. Throughout his life, Paik proved that the avant-garde is to keep challenging himself without being complacent with one medium or a small success. Later on, he expanded his technological realm into other media, like laser, and while suffering a stroke since the mid-1990s, he never ceased to take his artistic step forward until he passed away in Miami in 2006. In 2019, The Tape, which hosted a major retrospective of Paik's work, said that Paik already foresaw 5 themes in the 90s that are indispensable today: the internet and video art, the climate crisis, global media, and smartphones. These 5 themes have become indispensable not only in contemporary art, but also in everyday life, and as a pioneer of video art, Paik was able to foresee the future. Paik is a pioneering media artist working with various technologies in experimental ways. He saw the artist's role as consisting in thinking about the future and sought for better ways of global communication through art. Regarded as one of the forerunners of a new breed of artists who are scientists, philosophers, and engineers at the same time, and as a very special and genuine genius and futurologist with foresight, Paik still lives on right here as the most contemporary artist today. Thank you for listening to my presentation on Namjoon Paik's art world as it relates to technology, which we focused on the collection of the Namjoon Paik Art Center. Thank you so much.
The part for this fascinating account of the legacy and of Namjoon Paik's work and also his relevances today. Now you mentioned Tate's observation that Paik actually foresaw 5 key themes that we are still grappling with today, including the internet, climate crisis, and global media. Now, as a director of the Namjoon Paik Art Center, so how do you see Paik's vision of technology's democratic potential resonating with or even challenging artists working in the current world today? And is it possible to hold his radical vision, his radical optimism?
Thank you. Your visually and seriously question. So, it's a real Namhee part, not AI. So, 저는 제2의 백남준 그리고 미래의 백남준을 발굴하는 것 또한 그 백남준 아트 센터가 할 일이라고 생각합니다. 미래의 백남준은 백남준 예술 정신을 관통한 것을 말하고요. 백남준 예술 정신은 새로움을 향한 실험성, 그리고 소통과 참여의 예술 형식, 그리고 세계 평화에 대한 열망으로 요약할 수 있습니다.
I'm so sorry, yeah, I just need to inform everyone that we have simultaneous translation. So if you can please ask for your headphones. I'm so sorry, Dr. Kwon, I should have said that before. Does everybody have, can you raise your hands who needs headphones?
죄송합니다. 제가 한국어가 영어보다 편해서 한국어를 하기로 했는데 우리 앞에 한 분이 지금 통역기가 없어서 한 분 가져다 주셨어요. 저는 AI이 아니고 실제 백남준 아트센터의 강남입니다. 사실 마야의 질문이 굉장히 중요한 질문이었고 백남준의 예술을 이야기할 수 있는 핵심적인 이야기입니다. 그리고 저는 이제 백남준의 예술 정신을 이어서 얘기를 이끌어 나가는 백남준 아트센터의 관장으로서 미래 백남준에 대한 고민도 하고 있고 미래 백남준을 발굴하는 것 또한 저희 미션이라고 생각하고 그 미래 백남준 그리고 백남준이라고 하는 그 키워드는 사실상 백남준의 예술 정신을 관통하고 있는 그런 사람들이 미래 백남준이라고 얘기할 수 있을 텐데요. 미래 백남준은 백남준의 예술 정신을 관통한 사람 그리고 그 백남준의 예술 정신이라고 하면 세 가지로 요약할 수 있을 것 같습니다. 첫 번째는 새로움을 향한 실험적인 정신, 이게 첫 번째이고요. 두 번째는 소통과 참여를 하는 예술 정신입니다. 두 번째고, 그리고 마지막으로는 세계 평화에 대한 열망이라고 할 수 있습니다. 이 세 가지가 백남준의 예술 정신이라고 요약할 수 있을 텐데요. 마야가 조금 전에 정리해 준 것처럼 기술의 민주적 잠재력과 평화의 가능성이라고 하는 게 결국에는 백남준 정신의 핵심이라고 할 수 있습니다. 백남준은 기술에 대해서 민주적 잠재력과 평화의 가능성을 낙관하고 있지만 그는 단순한 기술 유토피아를 꿈꿨던 사람은 아니었습니다. 그는 세계에서 일어나는 많은 사건들에 대해서 관심의 끈을 놓지 않았고 쉼없이 정보를 섭취했습니다. 매일매일 신문을 읽었고 메모하고 찾아보고 세계의 사이사이를 이어갔던 사람입니다. 사람과 사람 사이, 그리고 사람과 정보 사이, 기계와 정서 사이, 그리고 도시와 도시 사이, 예술과 기술 사이, 개념과 현상 사이들을 이어갔던 사람입니다. 즉 그의 기술은 긍정적인 태도 이면에 세계에서 펼쳐지고 있는 불평등, 비평화에 대한 저항과 이를 극복하고자 하는 도전의 정신, 그리고 세계에 대한 지속적인 관심이 있었습니다. 그가 남긴 중요한 문장 하나를 떠올려 봅니다. 그는 예술가는 미래를 사유하는 사람이라고 했습니다. 이 말은 자신을 포함한 수많은 사람들에게, 수많은 예술가들에게, 그리고 예술가와 함께 사는 사람들에게 각각의 의미를 나눠주는 말입니다. 적어도 그의 긍정과 낙관이라고 하는 것은 미래를 향해 있다는 것을 잊지 말아야 할 것 같습니다. 다시 말해서 백남준이 세계를 대하는 태도는 예술의 실천은 모두 미래를 향한 그런 생각들이었습니다. 그리고 그 미래에 대한 생각들은 아놀드 숀베르크의 아방가르드 정신을 이어가는 것이었고 우리는 새로운 매체를 향해 발굴하고 그걸 활용해서 예술로 만들어내는 그 모든 미래는 그러한 도전의 정신, 저항의 정신이 자리에 있습니다. 세계를 연결했던 삶을 살았고 새로운 매체를 만들었던 백남준의 기술에 대한 낙관적인 생각들은 실제로는 도전과 현실을 극복하고자 하는 대안적인 생각이 자리에 있었다는 것들을 환기시키고 싶습니다. 그리고 미래의 백남준들은 실제로 지금 그것을 하고 있지 않을까라는 생각을 합니다. 감사합니다.
Pushing the boundaries of new technologies and experimenting with new technologies, and even though he was very interested in the ideas of truth, however, what he said that what supersedes in his practice ideas of truth and ideas of aesthetics is newness. But at the Namhee Paik Art Center, you face unique challenges in actually preserving works that are technologically that are obsolete technologies. So how does Paik's approach of constant experimentation and adaptation influence your strategies for how you preserve the work and how you support artists in their restoration of
그래서 매우 중요한 질문이고 이건 백남준뿐만 아니라 전자미디어를 노동하는 미디어 아티스트들한테는 너무나 중요한 구체적인 현실적인 문제인 것 같습니다. 백남준에 관련된 이야기를 이제 먼저 좀 꺼내면 굉장히 중요한 참조점이 될 수 있을 것 같아서 백남준이 남겼던 그의 이야기를 좀 들려드리면서 말씀을 드릴 수 있을 것 같습니다. 백남준은 TV 모니터를 1960년대 초반부터 쓰었죠. TV 모니터를 쓰고 그리고 이제는 더 이상 그 CRT 모니터가 생산되지 않습니다. 그러면 우리는 어떻게 보존해야 될까요? 백남준처럼 생각해 봐야 될 필요가 있겠습니다. 백남준은 2001년에 본인 스스로 이런 말씀을 남겨놨습니다. 1990년대쯤에 이 생산된 모니터로는 더 이상 안 되겠다. 더 이상 쓸 수 없다. 나는 모든 분들한테 부탁하고 싶다. 나의 이 초기의 90년대에 썼던 모니터들은 이제 다른 형태의 새로운 개발된 모니터로 바꿔도 좋다. 그러니 나의 작품을 사간 컬렉터들이여 나의 이야기들을 좀 귀담아 듣고 협조해주고 나갈까라고 하는 2001년도에 이런 멘션을 했었습니다. 이거는 백남준의 그 미디어에 대한 태도 그리고 어떻게 보존해야 될 것인가에 대한 문제를 핵심적으로 짚고 있는 문제입니다. 백남준은 기술 자체에 대한 진화를 적극적으로 받아들였고 수용적인 태도로 이해하고 있었고 그리고 미디어의 본질이 무엇인가 그 콘텐츠의 본질에 대해 집중하도록 그렇게 만들었습니다. 저희는 미디어에 대해서 백남준이 갖고 있는 개방성, 유연성, 민첩성이라고 하는 세 가지의 태도를 참조해 보아야 될 것 같습니다. 다만 이제 저희가 보존해야 될 가치의 오리지널한 원형들을 보존하되 콘텐츠를 보다 잘 볼 수 있도록 유연한 어떤 미디어를 개방할 필요는 있겠다라고 하는 그런 관점을 가지고 있고 이런 관점들을 통해서 본다면 동시대 미디어 아티스트들한테도 굉장히 중요한 참조점이 되지 않을까라는 생각이 듭니다. 물론 모든 아티스트들은 사실 각자만의 그 지속 가능성이라고 하는 방법론을 가지고 있다고 생각합니다. 그 지속 가능성이라고 하는 부분들은 각자의 철학과 그리고 작품의 내용을 결정하는 문제이기 때문입니다. 제가 백남준의 사례, 백남준의 관점을 말씀드렸던 것은 백남준은 그러한 그 관점들에 대해서 유연하게 기술의 진화를 스스로 받아들이고 거기를 직접적으로 본인의 작품을 보존하는 데 어떤 통로로 여겼다라고 하는 지점입니다. 이 부분들이 새로운 미디어 아티스트들에게도 참조점이 되길 바랍니다. 답변이 됐을지 모르겠습니다.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Kwon. Now I would like to turn the conversation over to our artists. Paik saw technology as a tool for revealing truth through artistic manipulation, using technology to reveal new ways of seeing and understanding. Today we inhabit a world where technological manipulation more often obscures rather than reveals truth. Ayoung, how has the evolution of digital technology from Paik's era to today's highly connected world have influenced your artistic practice?
Thank you, Maya. Well, it would be quite jeopardizing to do the whole talking, reading a bit of my script and also this one. Yeah, that'd be really wonderful. Well, the images are and videos are random, so you don't need to connect my answers to the images. Well, I would like to talk about two really distinctive important features of 21st century media environment. One is the hyper-connectivity that Namjoon wanted to achieve, which is actually already achieved and surrounded, we are surrounded by media. The first thing is media fatigue that we are experiencing due to the hyper-connectivity. I remember how the COVID-19 pandemic enabled capitalism to make a new venture into our private spaces, like our bedroom. And these became our labor space in the end. We had to watch endless streaming content and artworks online all of a sudden and participate in the endless talks and events happening online from the 2020. As a media artist, I had to produce a lot more than what I used to produce, and it became a new normal now. And I somehow think that this kind of overproduction situation is not quite humane thing. We are on the threat of overproduction and more and more. We know that it's not for ourselves, but somehow the capitalism itself is rolling itself somehow, and we call it accelerationism. This condition is quite different from what we experienced in Namjoon era. If we can call the artwork "Good Morning, Mr. Orwell," the early type of live streaming content, it was legendary and planetary because it intended to make a satellite show for the first time in the human history. It was the only that kind of artwork at the time, so that people can gather together, even though in many dispersed places. But now it became quite hard to make one time to watch the same content everywhere. We are all surrounded by 6 screens receiving satellite signals, and when Namjoon broadcasted to TV, now people narrowcast on so many different devices, and contents are all over the world. And now Chinese media artists have to fight this condition of media fatigue. What kind of media project can differentiate from and challenge the media environment like this? And this is very important question for me these days. Well, what you see is a project online called Delivery Dance Series, and I've been producing this project about delivery providers and workers since 2022, and there are many series. And the second condition is algorithmic management and optimization. As you see that I work with some certain delivery provider and created this fiction, I found that this ever-growing platform labor and gig economy created this very interesting domain of body optimization and mind optimization as well. It's all governed by algorithmic control by the apps, and it also connected to this hyperconnectivity. And this developed certain quite unique territory that there's no division between work and leisure or labor and rest. So in that way, we agreed to provide our production more and more. These are 2 features.
Thank you, Ayoung, for really this useful overview of the status of our media landscape today. Lawrence, how does the relationship between technological manipulation and truth-telling play out in the practice?
Thank you very much for inviting me here. Thank you very much for coming. Yeah, I think, there's my favorite work of Namjoon Paik is actually the one with Nixon. I think it's a very early work. What's it called? Where he has Nixon, there's 2 images of Nixon giving his speech, and one with a magnet over his face, and then it's the electric car flowing through the magnet and it starts to stall. I think this is, for me, was kind of like, I saw it at a very young, formative age. It really made me understand the kind of like the necessity of intervening into media and the sort of the mediation of truth-telling and the mediation of kind of politics and the way that kind of distorted image kind of revealed the sort of double speak that was going on there, kind of this sort of like the breakdown of the media, what that did to the message, right? You can see a lot of that sort of following into some of the things I've been interested in over the last years. And I think it gets to the point very clearly that, you might encounter in some of my works a kind of form of journalism when you enter the gallery or the museum. And sometimes people ask, shouldn't this be on TV? Shouldn't everybody know about this, what you're revealing, what you're talking about? And just besides the fact that, in fact, those works do circulate in other ways, in other media, on TV and all those things, it always struck me that question as kind of like strange. It's as if people assume that television and courtrooms and all these things are kind of anesthetic places where aesthetics don't happen, they're just where truth happens, right? But what Namjoon Paik showed in that work, and what I really try to show in mine, is that actually the forms of mediation. You know, I mean, you go to a courtroom and don't think that's a heavily aestheticized space. They're wearing wigs, let's say. Like, they wear gray wigs and gowns. Aesthetics play a huge role in the way that we work politically, and I think my role in the museum is actually to intervene in that, to experiment with other kinds of wig wearing, other kind of gowns, you know, not literally, but through kind of the manipulation of sound, through the way we tell a story, through which voices overlay the other, the medium itself, whatever it is that you encounter. For me, those are, the whole space of truth-telling is ripe for experimentation. And that's me not to twist the truth as such, but actually to experiment and not to forget that we are constantly being mediated too. Aesthetics plays a very important role in the way that media happens and is disseminated. And that's still things we need to experiment with. And clearly, with the fatigue that you discussed before, there's a necessity there. There's a call to aesthetic practitioners to do exactly that kind of work.
Just to get to your point, actually, when you referenced Nixon video, the television, and how natural purpose was saying that one way of exercising democracy is actually to talk back, rather than being at the constantly at the receiving end. And he wanted really to provide the tools for everyone in their households within society to be able to manipulate and to respond to that, the way that we're receiving it. And I mean, the title of our talk today is we are an open circuit. And Bjungjun, I think we commented on that.
Yeah. So my name is Bjungjun, and I want to start with the facts statement. We are in open circuit. So I've been designing circuit boards for many years, so I know what the open circuit is. So let's say there's battery and it's low. Let's say it could be some water, and if there's a switch, then the circuit runs. But open circuit, it's just open. Current doesn't flow. But I think Namhee Paik and for this open circuit is it's not this image, but this openness is about the junction point to connect to another system or another circuit board, resulting in hyperconnectivity. And through the internet, we are all connected now. So we talk about the world after. And I want to propose another concept called we are in closed loop. It's not my words, so it's just what they use in the mathematics or the AI or other DSP business. So in closed loop, the feedback system, the output is fed back to the input. They use this skill in machine learning as well. They fed output of AI system and users' feedback to the input to improve models over time. And AI generate outputs and compare against the final decision and provide feedback to the model, allowing it to learn from its mistakes. Once we are fully connected, the system doesn't expand anymore and transform into a closed-loop feedback system. Photos, videos, comments, and all other digital data are processed and fed back to the input as suggestions, commercials, and ratings. That's what we see every day through social media. Then what is the process? It is the application like Facebook, Instagram, X, AI-generated image and text owned by global media corporations. One thing to point out is in closed loop, the process runs from mistake. And what is mistake? That mistake is the low profit. They just pursue the way that brings more profit, not truth. I think that's how it goes. For them, it's not important if it's true or not. The important thing is the profit.
Thank you. We talked about, Paik really believed that increased visibility and connection would lead to greater understanding. Now today we really face a paradox because we have unprecedented access to media and to images. However, this does not necessarily translate in action or change. The question is to you also, Bjungjun, does your work with robots and sound instigate empathy and connection in ways that traditional media cannot do?
Yeah, so I was a sound artist before, and I was recording the voices from the refugees, multicultural families, the marginalized people, and strangers in our society, and deliver their voice through my headphones that you might have seen it just now. So I'm also developing my own device, a platform, which is headphones. And this headphones has a functionality that you recognize the position indoor and outdoor very, very accurate, and I can map the space and then deliver exact size-specific sound in the spot. So, for instance, from the recorded materials, I go out and then scatter around the sound in the open space, and then they walk around and then they listen to the sounds outdoor. But then, while I was doing these kind of jobs, there's one point that I got a bit frustrated that it didn't really sound out. I mean, I expected more from the audience. I mean, I wanted them to act, or I wanted them to speak out of this reality, but it didn't really happen. So that's where the point that I started making robot out of nothing. So I started building robot from the scratch. So I wanted to suggest total stranger that they have never seen, and then they give out hands to the audience. So I made a 12 robots, and then they give out hands to the student, to the audience, and then their response is really interesting for me to see that sometimes there's a fear, but sometimes they think of it as really funny, and sometimes they think of it they're just begging, or sometimes they shake hands, and somehow I got more responses from the people who is seeing the exhibition, and so for me, I still record sounds from them, but while I was doing this robot they became my actors, and they became my colleagues, and they became the people that I wanted to represent. And I'm making a theater with them, and I think through that I got some public empathy.
And so basically there was also with the robots you also have the sound element, right? And so the information in terms of your interest in bringing out the voices of the refugees, of the marginalized, was all done through
Yes.
Through the robots.
Yes.
And this is how you achieve more empathy.
Yes, true. Yeah. So I also use the headphones, and while the outdoor, while the audience is listening to these kind of stories, and then also combined with robots and their come out at certain point, and then the audience and robot, they somehow interact with each other. These things are happening in my performance.
Thank you. Lawrence, do you feel hope about the possibility of moving beyond visibility to spark change, or are the system that you find ourselves in practice? Especially today.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard, to be honest. You have to work on it. But I think I wouldn't do what I did if I didn't feel there was a necessity to create the conditions for listening to those voices. If I felt that it was totally precluded, that there was no possibility to hear, then I don't think I would continue. So maybe that's get to the hope part. But also, sometimes working, of course, with people in a collaborative way, build a kind of a set of. I think it's more. You know what? I think it's more about resistance than hope. I think it's really trying to understand how resistance manifests itself, where it emerges, and to make sure that we are neither seen, or the subjects in the work are neither seen purely as people with hope for something in the future, or as simply the sum total of their victimhood, but actually people who are resisting. And that is the challenge to hear resistance, sometimes emerge out of setting those conditions for listening. Sometimes it means you have to completely take away their voice. It's kind of counterintuitive. It doesn't mean that you just put a microphone in front of someone and we hear them. And in fact, this is what media art tell us, right? That the media is in fact the means through which these things happen. So I think making those interventions, constructing those spaces in order to hear these subjects as resistant is really important. I did a lot of work in Lebanon in looking at, not recently, this is the last 15 years before the recent war in Lebanon, at all of the Israeli planes that come into these airspace. And what you see there are two modes of resistance happening in the same video. So I gathered all the videos from the last 15 years. What you see is, you see someone actively trying to look for the plane in the sky, trying to find the source of the noise, like something rumbling above them. You can never really see it, right? The sound is so much bigger than the plane. So they're looking for the plane. This is one way in which the insistence to document the violation of that airspace, the production of fear was important. What you always heard in the background was also people talking, having fun, actively ignoring that sound, right? And I always found those documents so, it's then when I know I have an artwork, because there's something that is not, that the artifact is so complex, right? That it takes years to kind of pull out everything that's going on in that video, right? From the ignoring and the documenting at the same time. And I think those are really moments I try to stay attuned to. And really want to sort of allow people to hear in that full complexity. And that might not be playing the video, right? That might be doing something else, like whatever it might be. But finding strategies to kind of pull out the full complexity of those moments of resistance.
I think this is also at the core of Namhee Paik's belief in technology, also as a mode of developing creative or putting forth creative power that resides in communities. Ayoung, maybe building on these ideas of visibility and invisibility, your work have dealt with technology's role in modern labor conditions, and you mentioned it briefly before. But in what way does this relate to the visibility and invisibility of platforms, what you label as platform workers?
Since I've been working about gig labor and delivery workers especially, and service for delivery and accessories, I researched a lot about this, how the algorithm functions behind the platform and how those individual riders interact with the app. Even though they are riding on the physical roads, they have to constantly watch the app, and they are almost absorbed into the app rather than the actual road. This sort of verification or multiplication of perception of realities in the work, and in that way they have to be really hyper alerted, otherwise they would cause traffic accidents, very dangerous accidents. And yeah, all those things I got to learn. Luckily, I found a very skillful email delivery rider, and I followed her for a few days, and she interviewed. I had interviewed her and went out for delivery with her, which was an excellent liberating experience during the pandemic. And this on-demand service, well, actually, I saw so many delivery riders wearing the talabats and delivery uniforms. Well, actually, in Korea, we don't wear uniforms, the riders can wear. It was very unique. Actually, I found it quite fashionable, the uniforms, the color. I like to have one for myself. Those kind of on-demand services create a new type of labor, the invisible labor. Because during the pandemic, in my country, South Korea, people are crazy about this velocity and speed, and everyone started to order through the app. But since they put the food box in front of the houses, and we don't have any interaction with them, so we don't know who they are, their faces. We have no idea what kind of people they are. And one day I got to be so interested in those people. Actually, it would be nice to play the slides, I think, on the previous ones. People's dependency on platforms and tech companies are increasing. Also, it expands so many people are involved as a gig workers on the platforms, those invisible labor. I think capitalism is so very, very creative and inventive. The gamification logic has been appropriated by the platforms, and with those level of systems, they could kind of make this voluntary labor. They do work more. If you find the examples in Amazon fulfillment centers, they are distributed on this small game that like Nintendo Switch kind of thing. And to play the games, they have to work more to get the game money. And in that way, they voluntarily work more for the company. So it was a very kind of vicious way of capitalistic tactic to improve the productivity. This kind of self-efficiency and productivity are all entangled with those newly invented media, I think. And we have to think about the other way around to utilize those and appropriate those media in other way around.
We spoke, and obviously we spoke here now, visibility, what is it in our digital age? Potential for truth, fear of surveillance, empathy, threat, visual use of robots to create empathy, alarms with forensic investigations, it's all about very much about ways of putting forward and making us see or listen to it this way, and I use engagement with the label. Now, Paik envisaged that television as a medium for equitable cultural exchange with the US. Now today, also despite and perhaps because of our constant flow of global content, we see persistent hierarchies and imbalances in how cultural narratives circulate and whose voices are heard. Actually, Paik was mentioned once that he said, one of the professors at Kyoto University, saying that if the West knows about the East, 1/10 of what the East knows about the West, there will not be wars. do you think that your integration of Eastern philosophical tradition with contemporary technology directly addresses these cultural dynamics? Are you conscious of navigating this broad power imbalance between East and West? Or do you think that you are more globalized today?
I'll just start with the image. So, my practice, one of my practice was I think here you might have to change it to page 28. So 28 images afterwards. And you will see some two people are bowing together with the headphones. After that, more. Yeah, this one. So it took me so long, but I do want to show this photo. I'm sorry. Because it was my experiment about how we should communicate or how we live together. So not just that you thought about the world, like all connected, but that I use the headphones only with very limited people. I experiment with them. So what this headphone does is that so you hear something when you wear the headphone, and you approach to someone who is wearing the headphone, and you start listening to the other person's sound, so which is mixing the two. So if you approach another person, then with your sound, you mix that person's sound. So they approach other people and mix sound, and they are sitting together, listening together, what the other person is listening, and so on. And then on top of that, when they bow like this, they can exchange the sound. So with the new sound, they meet the new people, and then they mix the sound. So I was experimenting these kind of things with let's say 10 people. And next one. So this one is called dancing ladders, and ladders are kind of like it is about the hierarchy, and you step on it, and then it is the tool for going up and higher. And I thought that Korean young people are just living like a ladder, and I made a ladder to move around like this. So they dance basically, and then they move horizontally, and they free from their job, and then they enjoy themselves. So it's for the young people in Korea. Yeah, and the next one. So it's another photo, and it's also I get the inspiration from this kind of Korean painting, and this one is kind of the first robot show that I did in 2018, and I made 12 robots, and 6 right-arm robots and 6 left-arm robots, and as you can see, they are looking a bit different, and I made a robot community, and 2 different species are living together and casting shadows to each other. They live where? And then at a certain point, they all dance together. So I think maybe that could be the last one. So I give the workshop to the rural farmers, young farmers. So working with young farmers, we deal with robots like this. So we carry robots to suburban areas and make art piece with them. And it is also really, really meaningful thing. Also, I experiment these kind of things within Korea and within very limited audience, but I'm still experimenting these things. Thank you.
I like the idea of horizontal power dynamics and horizontal communication. Lawrence, you also deal with, obviously, again, testimony and voice as evidence. Now, building on maybe June's exploration of horizontal communication and power dynamics, how do you approach that the challenge of amplifying voices that even are silenced, marginalized, or systematically especially today, or discredited in official narratives? Yes, you mentioned it, but can you give us maybe more examples because you dealt with it?
Yeah, I mean, there's, so I wear kind of two hats, right? One of the things I do is I run an organization called Shop, which does audio research for human rights and environmental advocacy. And we construct events based on the sounds that are heard from a given event. And we worked very closely on the Hindu case for Al-Jazeera, and Rajab, the girl and the family who were murdered in a car while they were trying to hide from tanks that were coming past them. And I think there's a moment in that case which shows both the kind of futility and the necessity of that work, where Leanne Hamadi, his cousin, says, the tanks are next to me, they're shooting at us. And that was broadcast 6 months before we released our evidence that the gunshots that came to that car were coming from 12 to 20 meters away. Those months were spent looking at every single shot, looking at every single part of that voice, every single thing, in order to come to that conclusion. The conclusion that she had already said, already spoke to the world. And so in a way it took all this work, all this forensic audio work to turn her from a victim into a witness. She said it all along. She actually said it. So you see the necessity sometimes to transform a voice. What it takes to produce a kind of audibility, to open the capacity for audibility to someone, right? That was just discredited, wasn't even discarded, wasn't even understood. That she could be telling the truth. Now, she's a child, she's this, but she was telling the truth. In a way, this is what I say, it's the futility. She had said it all along, right? It's heartbreaking to know that it took all that work for us to be able to take her seriously. But it's also shows that the kind of labor in listening, that it's not just a given, right? That somebody speaks and we hear them. Take a lot of work. So yeah, sorry to bring this heavy story, but that's one very direct example of what you speak about. And then there's other ways where, you work with communities, you work with, I just finished this big project in the Golan Heights, and there was a beautiful moment there where what we're looking at there is preserving the soundscape of the Golan Heights before these wind turbines are built on this land and it will flood with noise the whole area. So we're trying to make all these recordings of the area before it disappears. And I was working with sound artists and musicians from the Julan, from the Golan Heights. And the one we were working with most closely, Bishop Kanji Musari, I told him, okay, what are we going to record? He said, we're going to record water pumps. So I said, water pumps? You know? I was imagining like something beautiful, some rare bird, some, you know, I don't know what, I had a romanticized vision of this place in the mountains that I could never access. And sure enough, it came back water pumps. And not only one water pump, 5 different recordings of 5 different water pumps. Right? Those water pumps sound like water pumps here in Abu Dhabi, sound like water pumps wherever. There was nothing special about them. So I sat with these recordings, you know, I skipped forward, I tried to hear what's interesting in them. And in the end, the more I work on this project, the more I realized that actually water has been dispossessed from those people for so long. And that these water pumps were actually a node in an autonomous network that they built to resist the expropriation of natural resources from their land. And so that water pump, as mundane as it sounded, was everything for these people. Their whole kind of like fight was in there. That was the victory, it was a victorious sound. It was a victory song. So sometimes going on these kind of journeys with a sound is also really interesting. And what I try to do is use the works not only to sort of show the sounds that are being preserved in that case, but also to try to break down this journey so that you follow that. You also feel it as mundane, as victorious. I also want you to sort of take you through a point where that sound transforms from its mundanity to its sort of extraordinary potential. And so I think, you get surprised also. It's not only that you're just bringing a mic and amplifying these voices, you're constantly challenged in this situation. I think it's being open to those challenges and where they emerge and where the limits of your own listening are also met.
It's interesting because basically you are using technology. You spoke first about silencing the voice, and my question was going to be like how you work for a month to make visible and to make audible the sound that was silent. And I just wonder, is your voice silent? And how do you voice your voice to be silent when you are making visible what nobody wants to be visible?
I think anyone who sees my work would not say that my voice is silent in the work. It's very heavy-handed. I'm often in the works themselves, so I don't think I have any risk of being myself silent. It's unfortunate, probably to the extent of my haters. But thank you. Yeah.
But also you move now, with the last example you gave, you move from really that scientific, rigorous work that you do, forensic investigation, to also the artists that you are also bringing. And I think, Bjungjun, you said it. You said that technology is not only about revealing truth, but there's also the power of creativity in producing stories and fiction that also that could be as valid as dark truth. I think we're coming towards the end of our stories and panel, but I have one last question. We've discussed how artistic practices and technological power structures have evolved from 1984 up until today, and I'd like to briefly look at the future. And looking ahead, what do you think, what are the specific challenges do you think that artists and institutions will need to address in the coming period? And I'm going to start with you, Dr. Paik.
백남준 아트센터 입장에서 이제 얘기를 좀 드리자면요. 백남준의 예술을 보존하고 그 레거시를 통해서 이제 미래의 백남준이 성장할 수 있도록 그렇게 토대를 만들고, 그리고 동시대 예술가들을 또 작품 제작과 담론 형성에 이제 자양분을 제공하는 일이 저희한테는 과제라고 할 수 있습니다. 그리고 예술가의 미래에 대한 사유를 지속할 수 있도록 우리 기관으로서 좀 도와야 될 것 같고, 그리고 백남준이 후기 산업사회에 관한 보고서를 쓰고, 그리고 정부 초보소 도로를 고안했던 것처럼 세계가 당면한 현실이 무엇인지, 그리고 예술가와 함께 고민하고, 그리고 이것을 사회하고 서로 소통하게 하는, 공명하게 하는 일, 이게 저희 기관이 해야 되는 일이라는 생각이 듭니다. 백남준이 1969년에 한 말을 한 번 더 이제 말씀드리면서 마무리 짓고자 합니다. 예술과 기술에서 무엇보다 중요한 것은 또 다른 과학적 장난감을 발명하는 것이 아니다. 너무 빠르게 변화하는 전자표현 방식인 기술을 인간적으로 만드는 일이 너무나 중요하다. 이게 저희에게 여전히 유효한 과제인 것 같습니다.
That's very nice to say. Talking about maybe transforming technology into more humans, you said also, how do you see the future human-robot relationship, human-machine relationship?
Yes. So I want to mention about the merging of human and machine. Okay, Elon Musk's the neural link, I think, is a good example. And this will rely on the nature of the humans who fear death and will take advantage of the commercialization strategies of large corporations. Money will soon create another formulas for immortality and confine humanity within capitalism. We must establish ethics and order that can limit and overcome this and suggest alternative ways of living and dying. And I think this is really important, and the artists and other people should make some rules about it.
Ayoung and Lawrence, any last messages of hope? I know you hate this word, but this is what we live by these days.
I'll make it very short.
Yeah, what can we be optimistic about?
Actually, Bjungjun and I had a very short discussion on the way to come here. And he actually asked me this question, optimism. We don't see any optimism. I'm not a techno pessimist nor optimist, but I love using technology and to explore how it's essential of nature is functioning, because ever-growing technology makes us really blind for many. It's black box. Everything is kept in the black box. Even though we use those technologies every day, we don't know how it actually functions. And what I found very interesting in terms of tactical media, in a section in techno activism, there is an app called Gojek in Indonesia. And Gojek is a really widespread app, I heard, and there are so many riders found it quite not delivering their necessity, their needs and actual road condition and their circumstance. And what the riders union did, they invented their own kind of pirate app or parasite app. They hacked the Gojek app and created certain little tiny minor apps that can be used on top of Gojek app. So they load the app and then they use another app on top of it. They spoof their position GPS spoofing happens, not because of this sinister purpose, but to reflect the actual road condition, which doesn't be reflected on the Gojek app. Or the senior riders, they want to enlarge the text. So this is a tiny little gesture to improve the apps itself. I think it's a really beautiful kind of resilience. Every one of us talking about resilience through the technology. And well, these minor things are the only things that we can do. Yeah, creating little cracks and kind of subtle kind of features in it.
Lawrence optimism, does it lie in subverting?
I'm not sure where it lies, but I think I would just end by, one of my favorite writers, really should be in her, if you haven't read ADMAF, you should read. But she talks about how the future and justice are intertwined, and without one there's no other. So the pursuit of justice is the pursuit of the future, and that's why we go.
That's so addressable. I don't know, wrap up for today's program of the talks. Very insightful, informative, and inspiring, actually. Thank you very much for everyone. Thank you.